So everybody wants to find something that they're great at. Even as children, we're looking for what makes us special. Some people find what makes them special through academic achievements, their appearance, professional achievements, unique skills, or sports. But once you find what makes you special, most people want everyone else to see their greatness. Because regardless of what people say, everyone wants to be validated and appreciated for their talents. Just not everyone knows the proper way to seek that validation, which leads to misunderstandings. There's a saying that goes, understanding is deeper than knowledge. There are many people who know you, but there are very few who understand you. I think that explains the subject of today's video very well. Ricky Davis wasn't intentionally a selfish, over-the-top showboat player who only cared about numbers. He was just someone who was trying to show the world the talent that he had realized he had at a very young age. He was just trying to show he was great. This right here is what happened to Ricky Davis. Now, before we get into that, do your boy a solid, hit that like button as well as subscribe to the channel, as your support is much appreciated. And I'm not gonna hold you up any longer. Go ahead and drop that intro. Ricky Davis was born on September 23rd, 1979 in Las Vegas. He then moved to Chicago and spent some time there before ultimately ended up in Davenport, Iowa, where his basketball talent was first noticed during a game in his 8th grade year, where he intercepted a pass and took it coast to coast and banged out. The dunk was so impressive because no one had seen an 8th grader do something like that in the Quad Cities. It caused so much excitement that they had to pause the game for a minute and let the situation cool down. On that day, a star was born. The next day, people were still talking about it, even made it to the morning announcement. All this commotion caused the head coach of the local high school to come scout him out and see what all the hype was about. And he must have liked what he seen, because he ended up writing a special recommendation letter to the middle school to convince them to let him play on the high school team. He ended up playing varsity as a freshman, where he actually started at center, which honestly isn't that surprising because dude was probably bigger than everyone else. And I know from personal experience that when you go to an average school where kids are like 5'8", 5'9", and if you're like 6'3", 6'4", even though that's a guard's height at the college and pro level, you're bigger than everyone else. So they're gonna run you at center and expect you to play on the block, especially during the 80s and 90s. But thankfully, Ricky didn't mind. He actually embraced the role and averaged 12 points and led the district in rebounding in his freshman year, which was pretty impressive. During his 4-year high school career, he gave North Davenport the most impressive run they had in school history, and even led them to the state tournament twice during his time there. And the best sign he had was that he kept improving statistically every year. And by his senior year, he was putting up 25 points per game. Now, he had actually committed to Iowa during his sophomore year, but an impressive run on the AAU circuit had other colleges showing interest in the star of the Quad Cities. And after an impressive showing at the Max Johnson Round Ball Classic, a game in which he dropped 27 points and won the MVP over another high school phenomenon named Tracy McGrady, who only had 13 points in that game. At that performance, Ricky had thought about skipping college altogether because McGrady had already entered the NBA draft straight out of high school, and if he was the MVP over him, he thought he could do the same. Now, ultimately, he did decide to stay committed to Iowa because he felt it would be wrong just to buck on something he's been committed to for a few years now, and he didn't want to let anyone down or do anyone wrong. And honestly, that speaks volumes to his character in my opinion. While I understand at the end of the day, you should always take the best options available, that's going to ultimately help lead you to your goals because it's the most logical way to achieve success. There's always something about a person though who believes in staying true to their word because you know that they're truly solid. And honestly, contrary to many people's belief about Ricky, at one point Ricky was seen as someone that was easy to work with. His high school coach once said he believed he had more arguments with his wife than with Ricky, which is pretty funny considering what Ricky's reputation will become. But enough with that, let's get back into the story. So Ricky ended up attending Iowa as one and done and had a pretty good year as he averaged 15 points and led the school to a record of 20-11. But unfortunately, they missed the tournament. He also used his time at Iowa to further develop his skills. Again, he had played center throughout high school, which is fine and all, but he was only 6'7", 190 pounds, which is not going to cut it trying to be a center at the next level. So he developed a jump shot and worked on developing the necessary fundamentals of a wing/combo guard. He ended up entering the draft and was selected by the Charlotte Hornets at 21, which surprised many that he had gone so early, but not Ricky. And actually, Ricky thought he would be drafted sooner by the Orlando Magic, who had the 12, 13, and 15 pick in the 1998 draft. Now, Ricky's career didn't pop off from day one, Actually, he barely even got run in because of the way the Hornets were set up. The Hornets had a lot of solid veterans on the team, and they were a fairly deep team who had actually just came off a season where they had won 51 games and made it to the semifinals. So they were in a win now mode and weren't really feeling letting some kid like Ricky use their time to develop. He ended up playing 46 games in the lockout shortened season and averaged 4.5 points. He would then only appear in 48 games in the next season, where he averaged 4.7 points and was then traded in the offseason in a deal that would land the Hornets Jamal Mashburn and PJ Brown. After the trade, Ricky did have some doubts if he still wanted to be in the league, as he hasn't been given any opportunity to show what he's made of. But during his one season under coach Pat Riley, he realized he wanted to stay. Now, he didn't get much run with the Heat either, but he was able to buy into the Heat's culture and philosophy of eating and training right, which helped get his body in peak condition. He would end up only appearing in 7 games in the one season he spent there before being traded again, but this time to the Cleveland Cavaliers. And it will be in Cleveland where he will find the most success of his career. Now, through most of his career, he had been playing 10 and 12 minutes, never really given a shot to show what he can do. But in Cleveland, they gave him the opportunity he had been waiting for, and he took full advantage of it, putting up roughly 12 points, 2 assists, and 3 rebounds while shooting 48% from the field. After his breakout year, he went on to have the best season of his career in the 02-03 season. He averaged roughly 21 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists per game. Also during his career year, he had the most memorable moments. The first one happened in the game against the Dallas Mavericks, where on a fast break, he decided to annihilate Steve Nash with one of the most disrespectful posters of all time. And after the dunk, he let Nash know how he was feeling with some not so kind words. But the funniest part is that Nash said had he had known he was going to dunk, he would have blocked it or stole it or something. Yeah, right, man's buried Nash on that one. The other notable one wasn't something that Ricky is too proud of these days. In a game against the Utah Jazz where the Cavs were blowing them out, Ricky was 1 rebound away from a triple-double, which would have been the first one of his career. Now, he said he had come close on a couple of different occasions, and after being aware that he was only 1 rebound away, that became all he could think of during the final minutes of the game. And it got to a point where he was trying so hard that his coach was getting upset and was about to take him out. So he intentionally missed a shot at his own basket and recovered the ball, hoping the attempt would count as his final rebound. This pissed off Deshaun Stevenson, one of the players on the Utah Jazz, and Deshaun came over to let him know how he felt. After the game, head coach Jerry Sloan also had some not so kind words to say, at least for Ricky's attempt to manufacture a triple-double. The media also were not too thrilled with the attempt and also harshly criticized him, and he was given the name Wrong Rim Ricky. After Ricky started to develop quite the reputation as a selfish showboating player who didn't care about winning, Ricky even said it was a crazy move, just a young selfish move. The team would go on to win 17 games that season, and overall Ricky did perform really well and was starting to prove he was legit. But things didn't stay sweet for long, because after the terrible season, the Cavs ended up with the #1 pick in the draft, and with the #1 pick, they selected none other than one of the greatest basketball players of all time, LeBron James. Now, a lot of LeBron James teammates didn't really believe that LeBron was going to be all that great for them because he was a kid who just came out of high school, but Rick thought LeBron was perfect for the team, actually saying LeBron is going to add to what we need and just makes things a little bit easier. But he also thought LeBron was coming in to be his sidekick. He didn't realize LeBron was coming there to be the franchise player. But he quickly realized after the season started and LeBron had came there to save the franchise, he will only play next to LeBron for 22 games after supposedly having some issues with the direction of the team, as well as confrontations with LeBron and the coaching staff. He had an interview shortly after the trade in which he alluded that he needed to get out of there and he was satisfied that he was traded. Ricky ended up being traded to the Boston Celtics to team up with Paul Pierce. He would play pretty good during his short stint in Boston, putting up 14 points per game in his first year in Boston, 16 points per game in his second year, and 19 points per game in his third year. But he was traded to the Timberwolves that same year he was putting up 19. He had a decent stint for the Timberwolves, putting up 17 points per game in one full season there. But after being traded back to the Miami Heat for the second time, he started to decline as he started to lose some of his athleticism to injuries he had suffered, one being a torn patellar tendon that initially was misdiagnosed, which didn't help at all, but he still had a decent season for the Heat, putting up around 14 points and even played in all 82 games. But the athleticism and motor wasn't there anymore, and the Heat were without Dwayne Wade, who also was dealing with injuries, so they had a rough season, and Ricky was eventually traded again, this time to the Clippers where he spent 2 seasons before being waived by the team. After being waived by the Clippers, he spent some time playing in other countries such as Turkey, China, France, and Puerto Rico, as well as the NBA D League, which is now known as the NBA G League. He did this in an attempt to make an NBA comeback, but ultimately was never picked up by any roster. But during his time outside the NBA, he really matured as a player. He started learning where to pick his spots, as well as how to handle himself within a team setting, and even learn how to deal with the media. And he might have been a nice veteran presence for an NBA team, but his past was working against him, hurting any chance of that happening because of the bridges he burned along his journey. Which shows that you have to handle every opportunity right the first time, because you might not get a second chance. But the good thing about Rick is he learned to accept that reality. These days, he lives on a 17-acre ranch in Pearland, Texas, just outside of Houston, with a large extended family. His parents, Tyree and Linda, live there along with his brother, EB, with him and his wife, Sabon, who he met during his years in Minnesota. They have 4 sons and a daughter. Ricky also spent some of his time overseeing the Ricky Davis Foundation, which began during his years in Minnesota, and which has lent support to various charitable causes. He still enjoys basketball, as actually the co-captain of the Ghost Ballers for the Big 3 League. He also does some coaching in hopes that he can one day get a job in the NBA as a coach. What I can say about Ricky Davis' story up until this point is to not judge a book by its cover. Some people seen a brash, hot-headed, selfish, showboating guy who only cared about his own interests, but I don't think that was the case. He was just a misunderstood young guy trying to show everyone that he was special, like he did when he was younger. He didn't have bad intentions with his behavior. He just didn't know how to properly show how special he was. And by the time he learned it, it was too late for his basketball career. But that's just basketball. He still has time to use that knowledge to continue to better his post-playing days, and it looks like he's doing just fine. So if you're misunderstood, don't sweat it too much. Many of us are. Just keep on doing your thing. Keep grinding. And until the next one, peace.